In this video, I'm going to discuss how you measure and cut your slab boards down to fit in a mold, whether you've purchased it like this one here from Crafted Elements, or you've made your own. I did have a request from several of my viewers to go ahead and create a video on how to make a mold, and I will do that. But in the interest of trying to get these videos out, I decided to go ahead and make this video first and let it get released, and then later I will make a video on how you will make your own molds if you decide to. Let's get started with this process of how I mark and measure. The first thing you need to do is know what size your mold is. In this case, this is 12 by 18, and I found it convenient to cut a frame the same size as the mold, and I'll show you how we use that in just a minute. Once I have a frame, then I can put the mold off to the side and not worry about using it. Now that I have my frame, I know exactly what size this wood needs to be as I insert it into the mold. I'm not sure whether I'm going to want a board that has a river going on two different sides, water on two different sides, or decoration on two different sides, or if I'm going to want your standard river in the middle, or maybe I just want epoxy on one side. I'm still trying to figure that out, and all of this is your own perspective on what you think you want to accomplish artistically with the wood. In this case, I think that I might make a board with epoxy just on one side. I'm thinking I may make this board a ocean kind of board, where this is the beach area and the water's coming in with the waves. I think I'm going to cut it so that it favors more this side. If I was going to make the board with the river going down the middle, similar to this board here, then I would cut this differently. I would probably cut it right down the center and have this nice big river. But I've already got one that I played around with. That's this one. I still need to sand and polish this. I want to experiment with the ocean and beach waves on this side. So instead of cutting this right down the middle, I'm going to cut it more on the edge here. You could either use a straight edge or your frame. Since I'm going to do one side, figure out how I want that beach. I think I kind of like that look in this case, where I'm going to take the beach and I'm going to run it down the middle right there. So since I have that where I want to go with it, I don't even need the straight edge. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to mark it inside of the frame. So I have it all marked up, and you can cut this board in any number of ways. You can use a jigsaw and cut along those lines. You can use a bandsaw, which is what I will do, or you can use a circular saw or your table saw if you have like a tapering jig. There's a number of different ways you can cut it. The key is just cut it along these lines. You don't have to be super straight or accurate with your cuts, because when this goes into the mold, if it's a little shy, then epoxy will come around the sides naturally anyway. So the epoxy will make up any areas along the edges of the molds that aren't perfectly straight. Later, when we're surfacing and sizing this board, we're going to end up cutting the ends off slightly anyway, as well as the edges. So here we are at the bandsaw, looking again at the lines on the board, but I've got a line here that'll be one end of the board, a line here that'll be the other end of the board, and then I have a line coming down here. Then I'll have the board cut to the size I want. I've cut the board now, and I'm ready to see how it fits in the mold and if I like where it's at or if I need to make it a different size. I already sized it up using this frame, which usually means I don't have to do much after I cut it. So let's go ahead and see how it looks. Okay, turned out to be a good size. And that's about all there is to measuring and cutting. I like it. Having this frame makes all the difference in the world, makes it easy. Let's talk about what I would have done if I'd have wanted the river down the middle. If I'd have wanted the river down the middle, and I had one board, like I said, I would cut that down the middle first, and then I would arrange the board to the point that I want it. But let me simulate that with, say, this being the one board, and I've already cut it down the middle. I haven't cut the edges off. What I would be doing with this frame, if you assume this edge is straight, is I would be putting this frame on here, and then I would be moving the river around to whatever size I wanted to do, or the shape I wanted. Let's say I wanted it right in the middle. I would be using this frame in that way, and I would be able to frame the board, and then when I had it on the board, I would go ahead and mark it. And this may not be the board that's actually in the series. Remember, I told you I'm going to put several video clips together. This board I want to make with an ocean front here at the side. So I wanted this amount of space to kind of have the waves coming up on it, and I'm hoping to put a couple little shells and other things in there. I'm not sure that will be in this series of video. In the future, you may see a different board that I'm working on. As I mentioned in the introduction of this series, the purpose of this series is to go through the process of creating a river charcuterie board from A to Z. Because some of you have actually asked for how to build a mold, I'll be putting that together in the next couple weeks. So in summary, in this video, I went through how I measure, mark, and cut my boards to fit in whatever mold I'm using. I used a facsimile that I made that mimicked the inside of this. I used a cardboard cutout that I did on my laser because I have it. You could easily cut it with a box knife or anything else. The key is you just want to match the inside of your mold, whatever size that mold is. And you might ask, well, why do you need to use this? Why don't you just use the mold? Well, you can, but it's harder to measure. If you're moving this thing around on the mold, it's hard to get a nice line here on the inside. You can get the outside, but getting the inside just right is not very easy. Also, you can't really get a good picture of how your board is going to look inside the mold until you get it cut down. The use of this frame allows you to get a good picture in your mind's eye of how it's going to look in the mold before you actually cut it down to size. Whether it be one side, like in this case, or whether it be a channel down the middle, like in that case, or whether it's a channel on both sides, like on that case. There's a myriad of ways you can make your river charcuterie board. It's all within your creative design. This frame is something I borrowed from Blacktail Studio, if you follow him. He's doing it on a much bigger scale with his big tables. And this is one of the tools he uses when he goes and picks out his slabs. He has a frame of what he wants to build the table to, and then he moves the frame around on the slabs. This is the same concept that I applied to the river charcuterie process. It's not rocket science. Once you have the board marked out by using this frame, you cut it with the skill saw, you table saw, you cut it with a jigsaw, you cut it with a handsaw, it doesn't matter. In my case, I use the bandsaw because it seems to be the most versatile. And then the next step will be, after you get it into the mold, is to measure the average width of whatever the river channel is, and I'm going to cover that in the next video. And the reason you do that is you want to be able to properly calculate the amount of epoxy you're going to need to make this pour. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have learned something useful if you haven't already started making river charcuterie boards. And I hope this series turns out to be everything you need to be able to make your own board. If you believe I deserve it, will you please give me a thumbs up and a like? It helps my YouTube ratings and getting my video out. Also, it's really helpful if you subscribe. So if you want to be notified when the rest of these videos come out in this series or my other videos, please subscribe and hit the all button, and you'll get notified every time I turn out a new video. Until we meet in this medium, I'm wishing you a great day and hoping the very best for you. Take care.